Good evening, everyone. I've just given it another minute or two to let everyone else join in, and then we'll kick on.
Look.
Many people are just joining, so we'll give it another minute. Right. I think we'll crack on. Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for making your time this evening. Really appreciate it. It's lovely to have you all here. 34 or 5 of us, which is fantastic. Those who've not met me before, my name's Chris Mundell. I'm the National Sport Development Manager here at Tennis New Zealand. Alongside me this evening, you'll see, hopefully pinned, we were trying something new there, is Charlotte Guscott-Gregory, who is a new addition to Tennis New Zealand in the role of Regional Tennis Organisation, or RTO, Support Manager, Development Manager. Most of you will know Ali Telford, who's our Club Support Manager. And our special guest tonight is Tennis New Zealand board member and lawyer, Chris Hall. So you've got the whole team tonight, which is awesome. There's a few more people dribbling in, which is fantastic. The aim of tonight is to hear from you guys. I'll talk briefly about sort of where we're at and some of the key things relating to our club constitution template shortly. And then we'll open the floor up to you guys to ask your questions, to any things you're stuck with, any interesting issues you've got. Throughout the session, if you've got something that you wish to ask that might be either a bit more complex or require a bit more time, feel free to put it into the chat. If we can't get to it tonight, we'll make sure we answer it and reply back to you so you have that answer. You'll notice that as you join the meeting, it should have notified you that this meeting is recorded. The intent behind that is so that we can post these onto our website, those who can't make it tonight to also review. There is another session on the 12th of March. They are very similar. You're welcome to come to both. If you're really diligent and got lots of questions, that's fantastic. Again, that will also be recorded and posted onto our website. So if you miss that one for whatever reason, and there might be some new questions or different questions that come up, you'll find it on there. I'm going to share my screen, and you should see some slides that we're going to talk through briefly. What you'll know is that, hopefully everyone can see that, just before Christmas, we released the final club constitution template. That was on the back of a good 6 to 12 months of ongoing feedback from clubs, working with our region associations, refining, editing, hearing from you, some of our earlier sessions we had at the back end of last year to get to a position that we're really comfortable with. You'll see on that screen there some of the feedback we received between version 1 and version 7, and an extended video on the differences between those two versions can be found on our Modernising Tennis Hub as well. Without going through it, the key 4 areas that we really heard back around were its length. It was a long document. It's a lot longer than a lot of your club's current constitutions. It was a bit daunting to start with. There was unclarity around it. What does this mean? What does it reference to? How does it actually operate from a club point of view and practicality? There was quite a lot of complexity to the original document around some of the terms, some of the new changes that Tennis New Zealand have rolled out. And then it did feel quite compliance driven. It felt quite top heavy as the feedback we were receiving. From there, we have progressed it to the newest version, as I say, that's currently on the website. And what you'll find reflected in that template, we have streamlined the length. So a big one about what we heard was how long it was. It's getting down now, once you use the guidance notes and use the optionality, it's getting down to around 20 odd pages. And if you take out the contents page and some of the references, you're down around that 19, 20 pages, which is awesome. So it's a much more manageable document. We've streamlined sections, we've made it more concise overall, and this process came through both regions and associations and the likes of Chris here at Tennis New Zealand, really going back with a fine-tooth comb of what's needed, what's actually required, and what we can get rid of. We've really tried to work hard to clear up some of our terminology. We've made things a little easier to understand. Sorry, I just jumped ahead there. We're really trying to simplify some of our legal phrasing, which we know can be quite daunting to those who don't have any legal background and things like that. Complexity piece we addressed by removing some sections. We presented them more systematically. We had a regulation alignment to save clubs from drafting. So what that means is that clubs can tap into the Tennis New Zealand regulations and rules, their regions and associations regulations and rules, to make things a lot easier for you. Overall, we've removed some of the compliance pieces that were daunting to clubs, and what we end up with is hopefully a really simple and clear template that clubs can go and use to both comply with the Incorporated Societies Act changes and also to align to the wider tennis system and the changes we've made for our modernising tennis plan. In terms of the specific changes, things like the transition space we talked to, we've added some bits in that relate to the guidance to support clubs with these changes to make it clearer how that's going to work. We've clarified some of the committee governance pieces, the financial flexibility sections, and obviously some new sections and some consolidations have been put in there as well. But we're really comfortable and pleased with how we've landed. It has been a lot of back and forth. This is, as I say, version 6 or 7. But that has been really important. It's been really important to hear from clubs via our Modernising Tennis Hub feedback opportunity, to hear from our regions and associations who fed directly to us and supported us with the drafting, and to hear from you guys through our previous webinars held before Christmas. Before I open the floor up, one other area I want to talk about, this gives you a little bit more oversight into the 4 main changes that you'll find in the Constitution template. They are our digital membership management, which is reflected, our system-wide membership, are the 2 big pieces that will actually, you'll notice in the club Constitution template have come through. There's a little bit of detail on them there. I do encourage those, if you're still unsure around those 2 changes, to use our Modernising Tennis Hub. There's a lot more detail and information and rationale sitting there for you to discover. But we believe that we're setting up tennis for a really strong position for the future to modernise the way we operate and to bring everyone into the sport. Lastly, this one's probably a really key one for a lot of you that you're really interested in is where do we go next? What are the steps? What is the process? So you'll see there on the far left, the Tennis New Zealand Constitution, a brand new constitution that sits across all of the suite here, adopted on December 12th last year, just before Christmas, a little Christmas present for us all. And that has triggered off the process for everybody else. The Regional Tennis Organisation is the new name for our associations and regions, and their window for adopting their new template is now. So they are operating between now and a deadline of May 31 this year to adopt their constitution. So hopefully you have heard from your region or association around when they might be holding an SGM. They may have already circulated draft templates of their own, and hopefully that process is beginning. We are working with them to support them through that process. You'll see that bottom line there, the lighter blue line. While you are not, as a club, able to adopt your constitution until after your RTO, your regional association, you can start the process now. So we do encourage you to be downloading the template, reading through it, working through the guidance notes in your committee, presenting it to your members, having those conversations now, so that when your region and association have had their SGM, you are ready to go. You should see that with the May 31 deadline, if that is when your region association do their SGM, the latest possible, you should still have about 10 months to work through this process. We are conscious that a lot of our tennis clubs generally have their AGMs in that September, August window before the new season starts. Our aim is to always try and allow you to use your AGM to adopt this new constitution rather than having to set up and go through the process of an SGM. I was talking with some clubs last night here in Auckland, and as a good rule of thumb, you should probably be working backwards from your AGM date of about 2 months to have your final constitution ready to go. Now, that's obviously just a really rule of thumb, and it's up to you how you proceed, but about a 2-month window will give you enough time to circulate it with your members, make sure the committee are happy, and then obviously put your notice of AGM out with the papers. So that's just a key, really high-level oversight of the timeline from now. As I say, you should be, if you haven't heard from your region or association, we encourage you to reach out. They are obviously in the process of this as well, and will be reaching out with their own local forums and opportunities for you to discuss their own constitution. Just before I open the floor completely, are there any questions on that timeline or window to start with this evening?
Well, in our case, we're planning our AGM in June, and we want to put the constitution, send it out to members at least about a month beforehand. So now we're talking sort of early May. So time is already getting quite tight. So I think it's okay. In fact, I've already sort of drafted up the particular constitution for ourselves at Mount Pleasant Club, but it does. I am a wee bit concerned that the template that was released in December has now changed. I mean, I can understand that it has been streamlined a bit, but so having used the December template to form our own constitution, what are your thoughts there? So we need to go download the new version and try and figure out where what bits have been cut out.
Good question, Richard. So from the December version, the only change has been to point 3.9. It's very minor. It was updated probably in January. So in the current version online, you'll see it as highlighted. So that's the only difference from what you downloaded in December. So there shouldn't be anything else you need to do.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That's a relief.
Yeah. And then in terms of your SGM, Mount Pleasant Club, so we know that certain associations and regions are ready to go. For example, Tennis Northland, we believe, has their SGM on Sunday. So that window is flexible for them. Yep. And yeah, we're working with them around when they're going to hold their SGM to allow their clubs as much time as possible.
Right. Okay. That's good.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm going to open the floor up to you all. So if you have a question regarding the Constitution, if you have questions around the timeline, if there's anything specifically legal that you'd like, we've brought Chris along for that exact reason, to save me trying to stretch my legal mouse. The floor is yours.
Okay, Chris, I'll continue the conversation.
Good on you, Richard. We like it. Keep rolling.
just briefly. Concern is that you write the constitution, you send it to the club, to the members, and an AGM or special general meeting, it's accepted. Then it goes up to Wellington to the business group, and they look through it and they say, no, that's not acceptable. You've missed out certain clauses or whatever. What are your thoughts there? That can happen, of course, and then we would have to go make the changes, and then presumably have to go back for another
Sorry, Richard. My bad. I'm trying to mute everyone. Apologies for interrupting everyone. Just trying to mute, and I will unmute.
Okay, so I'm not too sure where you cut me out,
Where
Ellie.
you
Oh,
were, just in terms of your process there, Richard, you were saying that if the club goes first, they may have to re-adopt if the region changes the constitution. Is that your question?
Well, if you do the constitution, you then, once you've had it passed, accepted by the membership, then it goes up to the to Wellington to be approved at the Incorporated Society. If they will go through it with their tooth comb, and if they find that there are several things or whatever, anything that's actually not acceptable, then it'll go back. That means that we then have to make the changes, and presumably, and I'm just checking this out, whether we then need to put it back even to the membership yet again for to get the constitution approved.
Yeah. So you jump in there, Christine. Yep.
So, Richard, the answer to your question is if the Registrar of Incorporated Societies does not accept the new constitution and wishes substantive changes to be made, then yes, you would have to do another loop with your membership. However, rest assured, we have paid very careful attention to the requirements of the new Act. We have spent a lot of time and quite a bit of money on external advice to ensure that all the constitutions that we have prepared are compliant with the new Act. So technically the answer to your question is yes, you'd have to do another loop, but we think the risk of that happening is very low.
Yeah, I think I accept that. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Really good question.
Hi, Christina from the Island Bay Tennis Club.
Good evening, Christina.
In Wellington. Hi, how are you?
Well, thanks. What's your question?
Yes, I'm on behalf of my club. We are a joined club with squash. So we're Island Bay Tennis and Squash Club. And I've been asked to find out what the implications are for a club that shares facilities and basically the committee and the membership with another sporting body.
Yeah, great question. So we are working really closely with Squash New Zealand around this. They have provided their squash-only clubs a constitution template, very similar to ours. It's a lot more simple. We have been conversing with them around what a joint club tennis constitution template would look like. There are about 27 joint squash and tennis clubs around the country. They have someone on their side who is currently working through the merger of those two. Ours is the more complex with the nature of the tennis elements in it. And so they are using that as the basis and bringing the squash bits across. That work is currently underway. We expect to see a draft from them any day now. And because of the simplicity of the squash side adding to ours, rather than the other way round, we don't envisage there being too much back and forth. So we should have that hopefully available to be sent out to those racket clubs fairly soon after receiving it. So yeah, we can appreciate that that's probably bubbling away in the background, but we are really conscious of that and we are working closely with Squash New Zealand on that.
So does that mean that we shouldn't start drafting a constitution template till we receive the joined template?
Yes, I think that would be the most pragmatic approach, is that, again, we're trying to do a lot of the work for you to try and make it really simple. With the template we will provide, you will be aligned both to Squash New Zealand and Tennis New Zealand to save you having to figure out which way you go. So yeah, if you bear with us as we work quickly with Squash on this, and we'll get you a template as soon as possible. Okay, so presumably you know who all the clubs are that would need to receive that? Between us and Squash New Zealand, we do. Yep. Okay. All right. So I'm sorry to get into the nitty-gritty. No for the squash committee members on our committee, then can I say to them, talk to Squash New Zealand because something's underway? Would that be the right thing to do? Because they're quite concerned about it at the moment. Yep. And it sounds like they haven't heard anything. Reach out to us and we can help facilitate those conversations if needed. Okay. That'd be great. Thanks very much. No
problem. I'm Mary Hamilton from Tennis Thames.
Evening, Mary. How are you?
Good, thanks. So we have been talking with Squash and Thames about an amalgamation probably for the last 3 years or so, but our legal advice was to get our new constitution first and then proceed with further discussions about a merger with Squash. So that's something that's probably on the horizon for us in the next year or so. But even more immediate than that is we've got pickleball players who want to join the tennis club. So this pickleball just started in Thames over the last couple of years. They don't have a club. They don't have any facilities. We have a club facilities that are underutilized. So we are wanting to incorporate pickleball into our club offerings. However, the new constitution is very specific to tennis, and just wondered if you have considered pickleball.
Chris, do you want to talk to how we've done that through Tennis New Zealand and cascading way down with the definitions and so on?
Yeah. So there's a couple of, it's a good question. Couple of points in relation to that. First, there are a number of other bodies that are administering, setting up, developing, marketing, promoting both pickle and padel in New Zealand. We have been having conversations with those primary parties and will continue to do so during the course of this year with a view to identifying where we can collaborate. Sport New Zealand is indirectly a party to those conversations as well. They have an interest in ensuring that there's kind of sensible aggregation of sporting interest and that we don't have an unnecessary proliferation of sporting national sporting organisations. So just to share, there is a conversation early stage between us and the primary promoters of pickle and padel about where we might collaborate in the future. In anticipation that those discussions might result in something, we have defined tennis in the various constitutions to potentially include both pickle and padel, so that if a collaboration results, if Tennis New Zealand assumes some governance responsibilities, if those cascade down through the system, then there doesn't need to be an amendment to the Constitution to allow us or other tennis organisations to do that, because it's already built into the definition of tennis.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Chris. So
Sure.
Are you saying that the current template definitions incorporate that wider definition for padel and pickleball, or that's something that could happen in the future?
I'm saying that they already do. If you look at the template club constitution, the definition of tennis at the back of the document specifically refers to pickleball, padel, beach tennis, and esports as the four things that came to our mind as potentially within the scope of tennis governance and tennis administration in the future.
Perfect. That's very helpful. Thank you, Chris.
Sure.
Sorry.
Chris is going. Oh, sorry. Yes.
Oh, sorry, Chris. I was just going to ask. Covered in the terms of the definition of tennis as well, does that include disabled tennis?
Yes. Yes, it does, is the short answer to your question. It's the racket sport, defined as the racket sport played either individually or between teams, no matter whether by able-bodied people or disabled.
We'll just jump to our chat question here, Chris. Can you explain why clubs cannot complete their registered constitutions before the RTO has done theirs?
It's because by adopting its constitution, the club is becoming a member of the RTO, and until the RTO has adopted and registered its new constitution, it doesn't technically exist. And therefore, the way we've set the system up is to cascade from Tennis New Zealand down through the system.
Does that mean that at the club level there's very much flexibility for variation, or it's pretty much set based on the levels above?
I think the answer to is a reasonable degree of variation, and you can see that reflected in both the draft constitution where we have colour-coded clauses depending on whether they're mandatory to comply with the Act or the TNZ constitution and where they're optional. And it's also reflected in the guidance notes where we've tried to emphasise this is a template. There are certain provisions that you can't change and they're colour-coded, but the rest of it is optional and you can customise it to fit your particular needs.
Thank you.
Hi, could I ask a few questions? My name is John McGill. I'm with the Glendowie Tennis Club.
Evening, John. Off you go.
Hi. First of all, Paul, you made a number of very good points to start off with, and you had them on the slides. I didn't get them all down. Is it possible to have a copy of the slides?
Yes, certainly. We'll share the slides with everybody, but also those slides can be found in video form on our hub as well. But yep, we'll share those to you.
Okay, that's great. Our club is in the midst, with the very strong encouragement of Auckland Council. We're forming a sporting hub with our neighbouring bowling club. We're also in the process of constructing 2 padel courts. So your comments there were interesting. Now, from what I understand you've said so far, the tennis club side of things will have its own constitution and be doing some work with that. Our most difficult job is to get a joint constitution for the hub itself, which includes the bowling club. It will include padel. I'm sure that they're going to very quickly develop their own association and will want to have their own constitutions. And our overall constitution is trying to allow for that in the future. And just the third point, you mentioned that all our documents will go to the Incorporated Societies people in Wellington. Really, are they going to examine over 30,000 different constitutions? I just sort of struggle to see them doing that, given the plethora of different organisations that are having to rewrite these things.
I think that's a good point, John. I think we should expect a couple of things. One, given the sheer volume, the sheer number of organisations that are having to re-register and therefore the volume of applications, there's going to, over time, be potentially some significant delays at the Wellington end. The other thing I think is I would be extremely surprised if the registrar was resourced to do a line-by-line review of every constitution that is submitted for approval.
So where's that going to leave us?
Yeah.
Do they have to apply by a certain date or sign them off in some form, or is it just sort of going to drift away and be ignored?
Well, I don't think it'll drift away and be ignored. I think it'll be a time lag. You may be interested to know that Tennis New Zealand lodged its constitution for approval in mid-December, and we're still waiting for a response, so that it appears the delays are already occurring. They'll get to all of the applications eventually. I can't speak to how well resourced they are, how quickly, but maybe, Chris, that's something that we could have a chat with the registrar's office about and get a bit of a feel for.
Yeah, when we last spoke to them, their sort of early indication around this process was, in terms of your first question, John, around are they going to check everybody, they're going to do it based on the NSO and what they've kind of done. So obviously, as a national body, we have changed our entire constitution, and that cascades all the way through. Their messaging to us initially was, we'll check yours, we'll make sure it aligns, and then as long as everybody's compliant to your constitution, we can speed that process up. That is obviously different for each sport. Not every sport have gone to this extent and done full constitutions. So yeah, we are in conversation with them around how they're going to manage this expedience. And again, their messaging to us was, if you have submitted a constitution, we will deem you until otherwise notified. But that was, as Chris pointed out, probably back quarter of last year when we last spoke to them. So we are due to catch up with them again around, see how they're tracking and see what their thought process is on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Another question here, Chris, can you elaborate on how Tennis New Zealand is moving away from the told, not taught concerns from, I'm assuming that means from the earlier versions, and detail what amendments have been made and what has been kept?
Yeah, I saw that question. Chris, I think the easiest way to answer that question, rather than going through all the clauses, is for us to put a document on the hub which outlines that, and we can easily do that. The short answer to the question is we made drafting changes right through the document, and we also softened and amended in particular 9 key provisions in the RTO constitution which relate to clubs, their membership, and the obligations of clubs. Those provisions related to purposes, the eligibility rule, the requirement to get other people signed up as members, the language about access to club facilities, the role of TNZ and regional tennis organisations in relation to suspension, etc., of individual members, the language in relation to scrutineers at general meetings. We softened and amended the language in relation to resolving disputes, and we updated some of the definitions, particularly those around eligibility, member management systems, misconduct, the national database, services and programs, and as previously discussed, the definition of tennis. So quite a number of changes were made, and that was as a result of the very valuable feedback that we had from people such as yourselves and from Club Presidents Forum. So that's a summary, and if it's helpful, we'll put a list of the provisions or clauses in a document on the hub.
Should clubs get their own independent legal advice, Chris? And are there any legal implications for committee members?
It's a good question. My answer is probably no, but it's also a question that committee members should turn their minds to. What they can take into account and take some comfort from is that the constitutions have been diligently prepared. They were initially drafted by one of New Zealand's leading sports lawyers with a speciality in governance. They have been exhaustively reviewed and amended by the Tennis New Zealand team, by me, and they also reflect the valuable feedback that people have given throughout the process. So if I break the question down, is it necessary for a club to take advice on whether the document complies with the Act? My answer would be no. We've done that work for you. Does the club need to take external legal advice on whether the Constitution is fit for purpose for the club? My answer would be no. That's a practical commercial type decision that the committee can and should work through. And the primary purpose of the guidance notes is to enable you to work through the document methodically. It gives you signposts as to the sorts of questions the committee should be asking itself. And then depending on how you answer those questions, we've given the alternative wording to plug into the document. So appreciate that's a slightly long answer to the question. Short answer, if I was a club committee member, I probably wouldn't seek external legal advice for the reasons I've just described, but each committee should apply its mind to that question and form its own judgment.
Thanks, Chris. There's a question from Brendan here. We are unaffiliated to the RTO and have already adopted a new constitution. Does that mean the TNZ and RTO templates don't apply to unaffiliated clubs and we are outside of system-wide membership? Short answer, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Chris, is that's correct. As an unaffiliated club, you sit outside of the wider tennis system and the benefits and security and protection that comes with being inside that system.
Yeah, that is correct. Unless the constitution that has been adopted has the minimum requirements to dovetail into the integrated system-wide membership model, including being a member of the about to be constituted regional tennis organisation. Unless it meets those criteria, then the answer to the question is yes. we would, of course, strongly prefer everybody to be affiliated and to be plugged in. And so that would necessitate adopting a new constitution that it meets the minimum requirements.
Quick one here from Carmel. Clause 9 around club manager, that can be deleted if you don't have that role. That is an optional, it's in green there. So that one can go. This is probably one for you, Chris. If there's a lot of repetition throughout the sections with varying levels of detail, can we state it once and then refer to the clause if it applies to other sections?
Yes.
Great, like a short answer. Does Tennis New Zealand Masters become an RTO and LTP?
Sorry, if I elaborate on that answer a little bit,
Yeah,
Chris,
of course.
is I wouldn't. It relates to the previous question as well. The more changes you make to the template, of course, the more important it is to get some legal input into what the drafting that is being used and the overall effect of the document. So if you've got a lawyer in the club or on the committee, that'd be handy. If not, then, you know, by all means tinker with it, but that'll increase the value and the importance probably of getting some advice as you get to the end of that process.
Masters. So Masters are a Tennis New Zealand affiliate member. So they are not either an RTO or LTP under the new constitution. They'll be an NAO, a national affiliate organisation, and will have a relevant constitution for them. For our Masters clubs who sit around the country, for example, Tennis Auckland Seniors and the likes, they will become members of the national affiliate and an affiliate member of their relevant RTO. So it's a slightly different structure for the Masters clubs, and they are being provided with draft constitution templates at a national level for the Masters affiliates as well. Rob Gill, I can see you've raised your hand. Do you want to jump in there?
Yes, thank you. So if then we are a Masters, Rob Gill from Manly Park Seniors Tennis Club. I think we're the only dedicated Masters or Seniors Tennis Club in New Zealand, and we think in the Southern Hemisphere, where we have our own tennis courts. We're not drawn, we don't use other people's facilities. So do you believe we would be using the constitution from Tennis Masters, Tennis New Zealand Masters, or from, in our case, Tennis Northern?
You are currently affiliated to Tennis Northern as a club, though, aren't you? You're not an affiliate member of Tennis Northern.
We don't currently belong to Tennis Northern because we don't play interclub with them, and it would provide us an extra cost, which we'd have to pass on to our almost entirely retired membership. So to keep our fees low, we're affiliated through Tennis New Zealand Masters. That's where we currently pay our affiliation fee. But I haven't heard anything from them about them producing a new constitution for us to align with.
It's a really good question, and I'll bring Chris in here as well, because the sticky point for me, Chris, Hall, is they have a facility and courts and clubs. So they're not affiliated to Tennis Northern, so therefore I would say that they would use the Masters Club template rather than our one.
Yeah, correct. We're in the process, we're in a conversation with New Zealand Masters about and working with them to develop a constitution for the national body. We need to make a bit of progress on that to then be able sensibly to develop a template for the affiliates of the national body. And so that's a bit of a work in progress, Rob. Chris, I don't recall the status of the engagement with New Zealand Masters. Can you update us on that?
I've got a call with them tomorrow. So Wes Elder, who's a Masters member, is working with them to do their drafting. I've got a call with them tomorrow to pick up where we left off. So watch this space there, Rob, and we'll let you know how we carry on with that.
Thank you. Just going back to the previous question about timing. So we're aiming for our AGM in June, which means getting a constitution completed and out to members by May. So time is of the essence, I guess. May I ask another question, please?
Yeah, of course.
So in the new constitution, there's an option. It talks about an option for life membership, and that's there to put that through and propose life membership. We are really struggling with getting committee members. Partly it's to do with the age and stage of people. You know, they're retired and a lot of them are traveling and don't feel they can take it on. We're going to lose our treasurer this year, and I think we may actually have to go to the market and pay someone for the first time if we can't find somebody to take that on. I'd like to consider some kind of reward for those people who do put their hand up and join the committee and actively help by providing, and this hasn't even been agreed at our club, but free membership for the year that they're serving, so that those who decide not to participate and not to help are paying, you know, and you can opt out. Like myself personally, I will opt out and say I'll continue to pay my membership. But I don't see anywhere in the constitution that's here that would allow us to do that. Can I have just any thought about that, or any other clubs struggling with this?
I know from my club, West End, we did give discounts to committee members for being on the roll, and on honorary memberships to certain positions, presidents, etc. Chris, I assume clubs have the ability in the template to add those provisions in around their offices and what those special exemptions would be?
Well, yeah, I mean, the flip side of Rob's point is there's nothing in the Constitution that prevents you, Rob, from doing what you just said. You decide what your membership fees are or are not, and you don't need to bake that into the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the point of, I mean, it would be a new thing for our club and enabling some members to not have to pay the subscription. I can see it being contentious. I think
Sure.
there'll be quite a few questions at the AGM, but at the end of the day, if we don't have a committee, we don't have a tennis club.
Right.
Yeah, I think if you align it to the role on the committee, Rob, and present it to your members in that way, as opposed to we're going to give out some free memberships. If you say no, the president will get it and the X will get it and whatever, then it's much more palatable. But yeah, certainly able to be done within the template.
Yeah, given our average age of membership, the life membership doesn't have a great appeal.
Yeah.
Rob, there's a question in the chat side, the difference between 13.1 and 13.5, and that's, I think, dealing with club regulations, and that is covered off really. We're the same. We're just having discussions now where the committee members or office holders or volunteers that do significant work for the club should get free memberships or discounts or some type of recognition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Shailesh, you've got your hand up. We'll come to you.
Thanks. You just going back, I'm doing the constitution for the Wellington Vets, and I've started to use the Tennis Central or the constitution template that's there, Tennis New Zealand template. So does that mean I should not do that and wait for the Masters constitution to be fed through? Is that the approach?
We envisage that the Masters Club's templates will be far simpler than our one. Would that be fair, Chris?
Yes, it is. I mean, to be clear, affiliates like the Vets, you've probably got two options. You can affiliate to the national body and have a constitution that is consistent with NZ Masters, or you can elect to be like a club and affiliate to the RTO. You'll be joined up either way. So I'm not suggesting one option or the other, but just pointing out you do have two options. In respect of the process for having a constitution and affiliating to the national body, yeah, that's the status is as Chris earlier described. So I'd suggest just hold off for a minute, and we're working on that.
Thanks very much.
Rebecca G, I'll come to you, and then Aidan, I see your hands up next. So we'll go Rebecca first.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, my camera's not working, so I can't turn that on. But I'm Rebecca, and I'm from the Waimari Tennis Club in Christchurch. just a query actually probably for Chris. I just want a clarification around clause 4.3 in the Constitution, which states that individuals who are paid employees or contractors are disqualified as being elected as a committee member. So we've got a couple of people who come to committee meetings that are paid, our club manager, and we have a junior administrator because we've got a massive junior interclub portion of players. But I'm just assuming that they can sit on the committee, they don't have a vote, and they also don't form part of the quorum for committee meetings. Is that correct?
Yes, that's an option.
What do you mean an option?
Sorry, your if I understand your question is twofold. One, is it correct that the Constitution says a paid employee can't be a member of the committee? The answer is yes. I think your second question is, does that mean that the employee, could the employee, notwithstanding, come to committee meetings, participate in discussion, but just not be formally a member of the committee and not be part of the quorum or have a vote? The answer to that question is yes.
Yeah, so, and that's a mandatory rule because presumably the conflicts clause would be relevant, for example, if we wanted them to have a vote, or actually yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought that might be your follow-up question. I think that is a mandatory, I think that's a requirement flowing from the legislation, but I'd like to take that one away and just double check that, and we'll circle back.
Thank you very much. Will you come back to, how will you post the response to that question?
Chris Mundell, what's the most effective way for us to do that?
We'll come back to you directly, Rebecca, first at Waimari, and then we'll share that with the wider group in some form there as well. So leave that with us, but we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
No problem. Aidan, you were next.
Okay, thank you all. Thanks for holding this. And thanks for. Am I still muted?
No, you're jumping back. You're off now. There you go.
It's the usual thing. So yeah, thanks for that story. This is the first one of these I've been to, so I'm really sorry if the sort of questions, are sort of everyone else has got them resolved in their minds.
No problem.
Just thank you to everyone for obviously all the amazing work that's been done in producing these templates and stuff. So just very sort of quickly, they're all around the sort of membership issues for me. So the idea of the system-wide membership is that I'm the secretary of Miramar Tennis Club, and so my understanding is that all clubs and all individuals in the clubs are also non-voting members of Tennis New Zealand. Obviously, the clubs are members of the RTO, but the individuals are also. So that's right. So I can see a thumb up there. And I know there was a question that might sort of in the chat I saw that might thingy on there. So what you're wanting at a club level is that everybody interacts digitally with the club, becomes a member in some shape or form, and we decide those categories, whether they're voting members or non-voting members. That brings up two questions for me. One is how the consent requirement under the Act is going to be kind of activated. Right now, I'm assuming that Club Spark is going to work some magic around that. So there's just a question. I realise it's not directly a constitution question, but obviously,
it's fine.
But obviously, so everybody who becomes a member has to explicitly consent in some ways. Now, at the moment, when our guys join up through Club Spark, that's just taken as sort of consent. But someone who just books a court for paper play, they use
all of those. Yeah, you're right. And so all of our, our book accord and our Club Spark, which are our two Tennis New Zealand products, will be updated to reflect that, and that somebody will need to tick a box saying I consent, and that'll happen on an annual basis or a regular basis as they sign up.
So even someone who signs up for a coaching thing, if we use the coaching facility on Club Spark, same thing?
At this stage, coaches aren't included, Chris, if I'm correct.
You got a non-member signing up for coaching.
Oh, at the club?
Because all our coaching's through Club Spark as well.
Yeah, so they would also consent to the membership there as well.
Obviously, like the paper play, people who just turn up and just pay $10 for half an hour to play. they might do that at several courts around several clubs around the country. I mean, they might, they're going to be a situation where someone ends up being, non-voting member of like 10 different tennis clubs or something like that.
So our database is set up to find those people and merge. So it's only one person each time. So if they book a court at your club, they'll be a non-voting member for the period of time of up to 2 months. If they then booked at another club, those two profiles would merge. So we'd know that they are booking more than once, but not multiple people.
Okay. Do you think we'll see much sort of change, even though the sort of membership structure, I mean, obviously at the moment we're members of our RTO and so on. Do you expect us to see much change just on the ground in terms of the sort of process for affiliation fees and the like?
Chris will jump in as well. I don't believe so. Our intent is that the process from Clubland should remain really smooth. We believe that when people sign up to your club via club membership, etc., the addition of that consent and agreement to the terms and conditions to be a non-voting member of the system is about as much as it will take. So from the end user's point of view, we envisage it being very small.
Right. Okay. Very last one. Sorry. No, there was one thing in the Tennis New Zealand constitution about clubs requiring 20 members to become a non-vote, but to become a member of Tennis New Zealand. And I was curious about that because the sort of base requirement in the Act is a club, as an incorporated society, only needs 10 members.
Yeah, so we've lifted the bar to 20 around our sustainability, and that we believe, a club with 10 members can be an incorporated society, but we felt that any new clubs coming into the system would need 20 just to show that they're of scale and sustainability to at least get themselves up and running. Would that be fair, Chris?
New clubs, isn't it? Yeah. That's outside. All of us will be dealt with through the transitionals. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I'm done for now. Sorry if I've monopolised.
No worries, Aidan. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
I'll just jump onto the chat because there's a question there before I come to you, Chris. I can see your hand up, so I'll come to you soon. Is it still proposed that each club would no longer control its own membership database and its database would be legally owned and held by TNZ? I'll just clear that one up because that's not quite correct. Each club is required to provide their membership data to the Tennis New Zealand database. That process occurs through usually a third-party membership management system. So, for example, ClubSpark is a third-party membership management system that your club would engage to be the database for your club. Our database would pull information from those third parties, a set of information, not the whole amount, and put that information into the database. So your club still very much owns its own database and manages that day to day. The requirement in the new constitution is that that database system talks to our national database and provides us with that subset of information to assist in our growth of the sport. Chris, I'll come to you there. You've got your hand up. You were the next one I saw. Baker.
Hi, everyone, and good evening. I'm Chris from Linfield Tennis Club. So I'm the one working through rewriting our constitution, and I guess our current constitution is only about 8 pages long, so it's going to be substantially longer once we incorporate all of the, the template. But I guess a couple of questions. In the draft constitution, we refer to the duties under the Act. So they're specific duties that are set out, I think, sections 54 to 61 or so off the top of my head. I think I've got the Act open. So would we be able to have Tennis New Zealand provide, I guess, a list of what those are? Because officers or committee members aren't going to go away and read all of those, and they were, I guess, technically there in the past, but they're a bit more explicit. And then secondly, when officers get, I guess, elected at the AGM, they have to declare that they're, eligible to be elected, so they have to meet the constitution and then certain rules under the Act as well. The template on the Incorporated Societies site is pretty long. So I just wonder whether Tennis New Zealand will be providing example documents that we could use, because I know the ones what we have at the moment won't meet the new Act's requirements.
Chris Hall? You're just on mute there, Chris. Hall, not Baker, you're right.
Right, thank you. I think there were two questions there, Chris. The first, correct me if I'm wrong. The first one was, could we provide a document outlining the officers' duties under the new Act? The answer to that question is yes. That's something that we could easily do. It'll be a one-page document, and we can post that on the hub. I think your second question was, could we provide some guidance in relation to the obligation of committee members once they become elected?
Well, it was more because to be elected, you have to verify, essentially sign something or verify that you are eligible to be elected, right, under the Act.
I see, eligibility, right.
You have to declare that you're not an undisclosed bankrupt and various things like that. I can't remember all the requirements, but you're meant to sign that declaration before you're elected at AGM.
Okay. And so the question therefore is, could we provide a template declaration? The answer again is yes.
Right, yeah.
Okay, that'd be helpful. I guess just as a comment on the earlier discussion on, I guess, honorary memberships at our club. We've for years, going back a long time, had secretary and treasurer be provided with honorary memberships, and then a number of years ago now, because I was the one that drafted the motion, actually, we included the president as well, just because that person is still president, but he was doing a very substantial amount of work, and we consider those three roles are the most critical roles in any committee. They're an honorary membership, and we've never had any problems with that. But we don't, like all clubs, we have problems getting volunteers, but we don't reduce memberships or anything to anyone else.
Yeah, and the Constitution provides that it's up to the club to decide on its membership and other fees. It would normally do that as one of the agenda items for each AGM. And in the interest of transparency, probably when you table the proposed fees for the upcoming year for approval at the AGM, you would disclose that it was proposed not to charge committee members any fees or charge them a reduced fee. That would be, done in the interest of transparency.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. One for you, Chris Hall. There is a big difference in cost between a financial review and an audit. It doesn't seem that there is any mandate for an audit. Can they use either?
Nope. Yep, correct. We deliberately left that to decision of the club.
Can I?
There are certain subject only to obviously meeting the legal requirements. There's a threshold in terms of size of organisation which some large Auckland clubs might meet. Most clubs will not. So as long as you pay attention to the legislation requirements, it's entirely up to the club which process it follows.
Just on that topic, Chris, one of the things is requirements for the reviewer is that they're independent of the club, which is certainly not the case in our club. So is that mandatory, or is it part of the Act, or what?
I think that comes from the Act, Richard. Again, let me take that one away and double check.
Yeah, that would be a big one for us.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And for a number of clubs.
Yeah.
One here, Chris, which I know has come up a few times in our conversations. Why does a parent of a junior need to be a member?
Two reasons. One, because generally speaking, contracts entered into by minors, i.e. those under 18, are not legally enforceable. And therefore having the parent sign up is necessary for enforceability by the club. Second reason, is that it's through membership that individuals become bound by policy. And we in fairness, we wrestled with this and we've had quite a bit of feedback on it, and we discussed it extensively with the current regional centres. And where we ended up in essence was We expect parents who are particularly when they're attending clubs or other tennis venues to be bound by the same policies and behavioural standards as the players. The only way we can do that is by having them bound through membership. So those are the two key reasons why we have that parent clause in there in respect of members who are under 18.
Thanks, Chris. The one here, are clubs free to choose which membership database they use? You are. So we are currently in conversations with the 5 main providers of membership management systems across New Zealand. Our IT team did a bit of an audit to find out which those 5 were, and we are working with them on ensuring that those clubs who use, for example, a Hello Club or the likes can also connect to our database. So that work is being done for you in the background. Appreciate that we don't want to keep everyone here all night, and what I'll do is I will go through all the questions that have been put in the chat when we post the video up, and we'll write answers to them each if we haven't already, just to make sure we get those out to you, because we do want to make sure you guys are getting that. I understand we need to pass the motion at the SE. Yes, you do need to pass the motion at the AGM to the new constitution in place. Your members will need to vote on that. I would refer to your current constitution around what majority vote is required to amend a constitution or change a constitution. So that'd be something to look into there.
Chris, just on that one, if we haven't already, we could provide a template resolution, and there needs to be 2 parts to the resolution. One is adopting the new constitution, and the other is to resolving it and re-register under the Act. So we can provide some template wording for that.
Chris, 4.3, does a paid employee include club coaches who are contractors?
Good question. It's a question about the interpretation of clause 4.3b. The answer is, I think, no, because the coach is just being contracted to provide coaching services, and it's not equivalent to a paid, for example, club manager. It's a different role. So I think in principle, the answer to the question is no.
Thanks, Chris. Fiona, you've had your hand up so patiently. I'll come to you now. Fiona McLeod.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Buckland's Beach. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks.
Okay. Buckland's Beach in East Auckland. A couple of things. I guess the real issue for us is that we have a membership database, like every club, with our members on it. And a lot of this desire to capture literally anyone and everyone who comes through the gate as members going forward is that it's going to create quite a complex, multi-tiered structure where we have a number of categories of members who have no playing rights, no voting rights, are not paying anything because otherwise, frankly, they won't sign anything. And really, it seems to me that all you actually want is to harvest their details and possibly make them members of Tennis New Zealand in some capacity or on some kind of membership database. But there's a lot of disquieting clubs that in order for Tennis New Zealand to harvest these people's, these contacts, they are driving it through our membership database. And we don't want these people on our database. We don't want every single person who comes to our community club, our open day, our beginners course. And obviously we're marketing to them, we're trying to get them into the club. But if they're not regular players, they don't want to play, they just came to have a look. As the Constitution, I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but as it was drafted the last time I looked, we had an obligation to sign them up as some kind of non-fee paying, non-voting, non-playing member. You know, it just is a real, I think it's a real issue.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Chris,
I'll
can I
just
take that one?
before I throw to you, Chris.
Right.
You're right, Fiona. The original wording didn't, in their first version, didn't reflect our intent around this, and it did seem overly onerous and it was read as requiring clubs to capture everybody. We really appreciate that's not pragmatic, nor is it necessarily ever going to be applicable. So we have redrafted that wording, and I'll let Chris talk to the wording side of it and the intent of the system-wide membership. But we are very much now taking a pragmatic approach around where they connect digitally into the system. So when you mention your club nights or your open nights and people are just coming along to try the club, the clause now uses much softer language around, as you mentioned, trying to convert them to members, but not necessarily having to hound and get everybody signed up. Chris, do you want to talk a bit more to that?
Yeah, sure, Chris. Thank you. So a couple of points. First, Fiona, it's a good question, and we've had a lot of feedback about the provision as originally drafted. To be clear, the core reasons why we wish to implement system-wide membership are not so that we can harvest people's data for the sake of it, but two main reasons. One, so that everybody who's active participant in tennis is bound by policy, code of conduct, etc. And two, so that we do have a national data set which can be used to generate insight and identify trends for the benefit of everybody in the system, including clubs. That said, so that was my first point. Why are we doing this? Secondly, we heard the feedback and we got quite a lot of it. If you get the chance, have a look at clause 3.8e in the revised template. It now says that members shall use reasonable efforts to assist, and I think it used a stronger word previously, individuals that wish to play, coach, or train at the club to become a member where practical. Those last two words were added. So to speak to your example, if someone comes along to an open day to have a look, will you need to sign them up? No. If somebody comes to play once as a guest of an existing member, do you have to sign them up as a member? No. If somebody is going to, if you offer pay to play at your facility and someone is a regular attendee as pay to play, yes, we would like them plugged into the system-wide membership over time, but you'll need to form a view of when and how that becomes practical. So, as I say, have a look at the language. We've softened it considerably. The objective still does remain to get as many people plugged into the system over time as we can for the two reasons I mentioned, but we've softened the language and it needs to be practical, and it is going to take time to achieve that.
Yeah, but I mean, going back to what the point a gentleman raised earlier, I mean, if you're in Auckland and you're on pay to play, you may well be playing in several different facilities. Not all of them are clubs. They can often be, I mean, in Auckland, owned by Tennis Auckland or whatever. I completely understand why you want them to become members of Tennis New Zealand. They are playing tennis and they're booking facilities. They may come through schools, public courts, whatever. What I don't understand is why, if they happen to book one of their 5 courts that summer on a club, that they have to become a member of that club when they clearly are not a member of that club. They're not going to be not in the normal sense. And it's actually going to be very difficult for us administratively to segregate these people. Sometimes we want to invite them, sometimes we can't invite them, sometimes they have the right, sometimes they don't. It's on a practical level, I don't think people appreciate how difficult it's going to be to say to these people, oh yes, you're a member of our club, but actually not really, not like everyone else.
Can I ask you a question, Fiona? When people come to your facility to pay to play, do they sign anything or tick a box, or as part of the booking system agree to be bound by any terms and conditions, any behavioural standards or anything of that nature?
We don't, and I don't know how unusual we are in this, but we're very popular members club. And so we don't actually have pay to play. We don't typically have non-members play. They
Right.
have to come as, they're not strictly speaking meant to even come as guests of members. They are invited to our organized sessions, which are led by a committee member or whatever. So, and only then on a once or twice basis. So I appreciate that we might be slightly different to other people, but once you have a pay to play situation, you are, of course, by signing, by booking the court, by paying, you are committing to the terms and conditions of that booking. So you're always going to have a contractual nexus. Membership, and this is, I mean, for example, going back to the parents of juniors, we have a contractual nexus with every parent. Of course, it's the parent that signs the junior up. It's the parent that pays. It's the parent. But the junior is the member, but the parent is still bound by our terms and our policies and so on. They don't have to become a member for that to be the case in law.
No, but to be bound by Tennis New Zealand national policies, for example, our participant protection policy, they do need to become a member of TNZ.
Why not have that as a contractual term?
Because then we would have to enter into a contract with every individual in the country.
No, when they sign they sign up their junior.
I see.
It's just the same whether they sign up as I am a member or I am bound by these requirements is legally you reach the same point.
Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't, and that's the current system. And the problem with the current system is, to use your example, someone joins to be a member of Buckland's Beach, they sign a form agreeing to be bound by your terms and conditions and policies. Unless you have adopted a player protection policy which is equivalent to the TNZ one, they won't be bound by such a thing. And unfortunately, many entities in the country have not adopted national policies like that one. That's why
we have to, in order to be affiliated, we have to adopt your rules.
Yeah, all I'm saying is in the world we live in today, that actually hasn't happened.
But it will be. We won't be able to be affiliated unless we have a constitution which says that we comply with your rules.
Oh, sorry. Use again the player protection policy as an example. Today, that only cascades through the system if each entity adopts it or one equivalent to it. Under a national system-wide membership model, that policy will apply to everybody who's a member. It's not reliant on every entity in the system adopting it or an equivalent one. That is one of the key drivers for system-wide membership, so that we can get away from the current model where we've got parts of the country covered by national policies, but many parts which are not, because entities simply haven't adopted the national policy or one equivalent to it.
Yeah, what we'll do is I think we'll circle back to you on this and give you some more detail around that, just to work you through. Just to your earlier point around those who you might use book a court and become members, they would probably be defined in your club as a casual member, so therefore wouldn't have the rights and obligations as a paid full senior member. But we're certainly happy to circle back to you and talk with you further on that. I'm just conscious of time and noting that there's a couple more questions. Betty, I've seen you pop a couple of questions in, and we recognise your notes, Betty, as an email we received from Brittany in the far north. So we discussed those questions in the office today, Betty, and we'll get a response back to you. In short, your pickleball playing members would be classed as casual tennis, because we know you have a specific set where your pickleball members, they pay to be a pickleball member and can do tennis casually, or a tennis member and can do pickleball. So we'll send you a full reply to that one as well, Betty. Thanks for that. read the finance review. We'll call this the last one for the evening, team. And then, as I say, I'll write up the answers. We'll get answers for these questions and put them up when we post the video as well. This last one, the finance reviewer, he'd like to remove from the Constitution the need for for the reviewer to be independent of the club. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's the question that I said I would circle back on, Chris.
Oh, okay, perfect. Clause 17.2 requires existing members to reapply. I assume this is really necessary. Not sure what you're meaning here, Richard, but yes, when it comes to members of your club, you need to agree to be a member each and every year, and that'll happen as it currently does when they sign up each year. In terms of your club's, and correct me if I'm wrong here, does your club need to reapply to your RTO, which is also the case, but I assume you're meaning your members each year.
Well, I was meaning that members will continue their membership until they resign. So therefore they shouldn't need to have to reapply each year or at all.
Do your members pay an annual subscription fee?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's them reapplying each year. So they would just have to tick a box that I consent, which is a new part of the legislation, to being a member of the club.
Oh, sorry, Chris. Sorry to disagree. They need to do that the first time, and we need them to consent the first time round to being a member of TNZ. That's the change. After that, you just run with it.
Hey everyone, really great conversation and really appreciate your time and energy in providing those questions tonight. It's been a really good conversation. Hopefully you've all taken something out of it and got some notes. As I mentioned, we'll post this video in the next sort of day or so with the answers to the remaining questions that are on there and link them to wherever they need to go to help with that. If there are anything else burning that you have that you might think of tonight or tomorrow when you talk to your committee, you're always welcome to reach out to myself or any of the TNZ team, and we can point you in the right direction or provide responses where we can. As I said at the start, your regions and associations, now known as RTOs, should be working through their constitution process and sharing that with you. I know a number of associations are already there. If you're unsure of where that process is at because your club might be ready to go, then we recommend reaching out. But otherwise, as I said, we've got another one of these sessions on the 12th of March, same time. We'll share the link again closer to time, which you're welcome to attend again if you want to ask more questions. But other than that, Chris, is there anything final from you?
Oh, no, only to say thanks for the great turnout and lots of good questions and discussion. Don't want to sound like the government, but we are here to help. So keep firing in your questions and we'll keep turning them around to the best of our ability.
Yeah, and thanks to you, Chris. Again, this is taking up your time as well, so really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening, everybody, and we'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Many thanks.
Thank you.
Gracias.